you're looking at this video, I bet you're having a problem with your starter. I had a problem with my starter on my 2007 Road King. Here are the tools you'll need to replace the starter, nothing too exotic. Let me show you how the problem presented itself on my bike. You turn the power on, you hit your run switch, and then when you press the start button, nothing happens. You hear the click of the starter relay and that's it. This happened to me not too long ago on a trip to Malibu where I pulled off to get some gas with my buddies, and after I gassed up my bike, it wasn't going anywhere. So in order to do some diagnostics on it, you want to take your saddlebags off, take your seat off, take your side covers off. It's always a good practice to kind of remove the scratchables away from your bike. Also, you're going to need to gain access to your battery in order to replace your starter, so you got to do this anyway. The first thing you want to do is check the static charge of your battery. Here I'm at 12.99 volts. Anything over 12.7 is full charged, so I'm sitting pretty on this. I turn my power on and headlight comes on and my voltage starts dropping, which is normal. And then I'm going to fire up the engine, and what you'll see is my voltage drop will go to 10.09 volts, and anything over 9.6 is fine. These are the numbers straight out of the repair manual. So 12.7 or greater, it's fully charged. At 12.6, your battery is only 75% charged. If your battery reads between 12 and 12.5, your battery is undercharged and you got to charge it. That could be why your starter isn't turning over. And under load, when you're running the starter, anything over 9.6 is fine. But first start with your battery to make sure you got a healthy battery, because if you don't have a good battery, your starter's not going to go. Check your cables, both your positive and negative cables, with an ohm meter for resistance. You should have essentially no resistance in these cables. And after you're checking them out here, as you can see, my resistance is 0. Stretch them out, twist them, see if you can generate some sort of short. These cables checked out fine, so I could eliminate that. That's my maxi fuse that I'm sliding off my fuse block. Just tug on your fuse block and it should slide off these rails pretty easily, and then depress these little tabs and the cover will come right off, exposing your fuses and your starter and brake relay, which are those two black boxes there. Those relays just plug in and out. They're interchangeable. They're identical parts. And if you think your starter relay is bad, just swap it out with your brake relay and see if your engine starts up. That's what it looks like when you pull it out. When you pull it out, make sure you plug it back in the same direction, because it is pole sensitive. That part is not, you don't want to turn it upside down. Next is remove the command wire from your starter solenoid. That's that little green wire with the white terminal connector, and that'll expose the spade terminal on your solenoid. And what you can do is rig up a 10 gauge wire with a crimp-on connector, pick it up at the local hardware store, and slide it onto that terminal that you just exposed, and with the other end go to the positive side of your battery. So go to the positive terminal and touch the other end of the wire. Make sure your bike's in neutral, because this thing will lurch forward if it's not. So what that does, it sends 12 volts to the solenoid, it turns over, and that tends to indicate your starter's working good. My problem is I had a intermittent failure. If you go down to number 6 here, we just covered 1 through 5. I tried that technique when I was at a gas station, and my starter did not turn over, which really confirmed that the problem I was having was with a bad starter. Diagnosing a bad starter is frequently a process of elimination. It's a diagnosis of exclusion, where you exclude everything else. Make sure your battery cables are tight. Make sure they're tight in connection with the starter solenoid. Make sure your starter relay is working. Go through all that, and if everything checks out, then it probably is a bad starter. The first thing you want to do in replacing the starter is disconnect your battery cables and remove your battery. Takes a 10 millimeter wrench to take that out. Next is you want to take out the nut to your tab bracket. It just takes a 1/2 inch socket here, and you can see my tab bracket spinning in the back there. Unfortunately, that bracket's broken on my bike. I didn't even realize it till I was changing out my starter, and I had to go to the dealership and buy a new tab bracket. There's the broken one, and there's the good one. There's a relatively inexpensive thing. Next is get yourself a 1/4 inch socket and take out these mounting bolts. It's a 1/4 inch Allen, and I used a universal on the end of mine to give myself a little more flexibility, but I might have gotten it done with just a straight extension. I don't know. But when it comes out, you see that mounting bracket there. Pay attention to that. And also, if your screws are not the same size, remember which size screw came out of which hole. Mine were both the same size, so it didn't matter. Next is disconnect the wiring harnesses that are in your way. This, I think, is to an O2 sensor that just kind of snaps out of place here. There's also some oil pressure sensor plugs, and just kind of unplug things, get those wires out of your way. Remove your dipstick, and then plug the hole with a paper towel, because you don't want any loose debris getting into your oil reservoir there when you're tugging on your starter. Those wires up there, one is from your battery cable and one is from your maxi fuse. They bolt on to your starter solenoid with a 12 millimeter or you need a 12 millimeter wrench to take those off. So disconnect those, and that'll be the last thing you need to do before you start tugging on your starter to get it disengaged from the crankcase. You might need to go on the other side and kind of tap it with a hammer and screwdriver just to dislodge it a little bit. But with mine, every time I wiggled it, it got a little looser and looser. I could feel it's working its way out. It took a little bit of effort here, but you'll feel it. It'll just come out. And you want to cover up your chrome with an old shop rag or something so you don't bang anything up. Here I got it dislodged, and I knew I could just slide it out nice and easy. It came out real simple, and that's the end of that. Now pay attention to these locating dowels, because those are two hollow tubes that go in where you screw your screws. Oh yeah, there's the broken tab from my tab bracket. But those locating dowels fit in right here, so your mounting bolts go through the locating dowels, and they need to stay in the crankcase. Don't throw them away with your old starter, and don't replace your starter without those dowels. There's some metal filings in there. Maybe that's why my starter went bad. I don't know. Let's take a look at the new starter. Comes nicely packaged in this foam material. Looks identical to my old one. They're both metric starters, both foreign made. The only difference I noticed is the copper electrode that you see sticking up there. That's that copper colored bolt. It's just about a 1/16 of an inch longer on the replacement starter, and that little difference, believe it or not, made it kind of challenging to get that starter in place. I had to kind of angle it back and forth, looking for the right way to get that starter to slip in there. At one point I was thinking I would have to take the heat shield off my exhaust tube there to give me extra space, but as it turned out I didn't. I was able to find the right angle, and it just moved into place. What you want to do now is be very careful you're not pinching any of the wires that you've disconnected between the starter motor and your crankcase. So get in there, move them out of your way, and then it's pretty much just a simple task of aligning it up with those locating dowels. You'll feel it. It'll just hit those dowels, and then it'll bottom out and go in place. Put some blue tube on your nuts or on your bolts. There's the mounting bracket that you need to make sure that your mounting bolts go through that bracket first, and then just screw it back into place. Pretty much installation is the reverse of removal. You torque out your mounting bolts on the 07. You torque it out to 13 to 20 foot-pounds, And then you can put some dielectric grease on your battery cables, both at your battery terminals and at the starter, where your battery cables clamp on or bolt down to your solenoid, and that'll make it nice and corrosion resistant. Anyway, I'm not a Harley mechanic, but I saved a bunch of money, and I hope this video helps. Take care.